morning, class. I'm glad to see such a good turnout. We'll get right to business here. Again, I'm glad to see so many people here. We're going to do a little course on night vision. I hope to teach you how to live through the night. That's the bottom line. You can call up a bunch of people on their 800 numbers and they'll be more than happy to tell you how to turn the device on and off. But again, I'm here to try to keep you to live through the night. Historically, people fought battles at night with fires and with torches, just to in order to enhance their vision. That moved on to flares and searchlights, both direct and bounced off clouds. So what was indirect? That would be the proper term, indirect lighting. You can imagine a very bright light hitting the bottom of a cloud and bouncing onto another area. We'll talk more about that in a while, but that can be done also. You can think of battles being fought around burning buildings and even burning woods and forests in order to move combatants out or to bring greater illumination onto the combat zone. You can bring it into a more technical age, and we can talk about lighted iron, trillium sights. You might have a sidearm that won't allow you to change sights, so then, hey, you can get some of that trillium and paint it on, or you can use a laser. Laser's a good little thing. People talk about, well, lasers are like tracers, they work both ways, but you can literally aim at a target in the general direction, turn the laser on, take the shot, and turn the laser off quicker than I can describe it. Lasers will have their place. You can believe that. They're a good tool. We'll talk more about them. But another option might be a low light weapon sight, be it a weapon sight or low light performance binoculars or even a single tube or spotting scope. These things will allow you to see in the twilight of evening and in the morning, between sunrise and sunset, either way. But even a low light scope isn't going to work in real darkness, and that's where night vision comes in. Night vision, you're going to hear about generations. You're going to hear about first, second, and third generation. I've even heard about fourth generation. There is no fourth generation night vision that I know of. You'll hear about the rumors of the Chinese are building fourth generation night vision. Well, I'm not going to get real technical here, and I'm not going to get real political, but I will tell you that recently, and now this is going to date this film, recently the Russians built a plant for the Chinese in order that they might build night vision for themselves. Well, again, you can have lighted iron and low light scopes, and you can even have a laser zero to a weapon already, but what you need to do is be able to properly identify targets at night. And again, night vision will allow you to do that to the extent that, depending on your purchase, I hate to put this phrase on the table, but it is a get what you pay for industry, and that's one of the reasons why you see, hey, that's an SKS there, that's a nice cheap rifle. I paid $80 for that a few years back. You'll pay a little more for it now. Again, we're dating this film, aren't we? But the reason I talk about cheap is that's a first generation piece. Fit in your t-shirt pocket. It'll focus close enough that you can literally read the names and numbers out of the phone book. It's called a GNOME. You've heard about the GNOME, have you been listening to the Intel report or other shows on the shortwave? A first generation device, basically first generation, they used to call them Generation Zero during World War II. They were actually red screens. Now they've come to a green screen, and that's what's called first generation. First generation will work good in as long as you have a sliver of moon in the sky, or the glow from a street light in the distance, or even better, the glow from a city. If you have, again, at least moonlight in the sky, you'll be very happy with a first generation piece. The basic problem with a first generation piece is it's not a real flat image. It so to speak, fish eyes from the center is going to be flattest, and as you move away from the center, it's going to curve away. So first generation has its light limitations and performance limitations as far as the ability to see something clearly. Generally, first generation, you know how television has lines per inches, and they are also known as pixels? Well, in night vision, they'll measure lines per millimeter because, see, that's such a small, actually what this is a phosphorescent screen, like a television screen. They'll measure the lines per millimeter instead of the lines per inch because there's sometimes less than an inch there. But if some old Russian night vision will go about 10 or 12 lines per millimeter, and that's at 15 feet you can recognize a person, but you can't recognize a face using that many or that little amount of pixels. A gnome is like 32 lines per millimeter, so you start to get good enough definition again so you can literally read the names and numbers out of a phone book. A gnome is a good enough piece that you can mount it on top of your 223 or your 9mm and use it for a night vision weapon sight. It'll hold up to slight recoil weapons. I wouldn't say put it on your SKS or your Win Mag. It might live through 1 or 2 shots, but you want your devices to, continue to function for you. That's another reason why we're doing this. Second generation, if you've got no moon in the sky, or rather, if there is no moon in the sky, sometimes I strive to practice proper English. If you have no moon in the sky, as long as there's no clouds, a star-filled sky, you're still going to produce a very good image with a second generation piece. A second generation piece, the image will be flat from side to side and from top to bottom. Also, a second generation piece is probably going to be a minimum of 32 lines per millimeter and up. You might find 45 lines per millimeter, and now you're starting to get into a very fine picture. When you get up around 45, if you get up around 60, like an ultra tube, you can recognize faces at 100 yards. You know what I mean? If you know what that person looks like and you can focus that device into them at 100 yards, instead of recognizing a silhouette or the shape of a helmet and trying to identify a individual person or a group of people by their uniforms, an ultra tube being about 60 to 64 lines minimum per millimeter will give you that face recognition at 100 yards. But you're going to probably pay about $3,000 for an ultra tube. So again, it is a get what you pay for industry, and one of the things we're trying to do with this tape is to get you through the night, so to speak, on the cheap. The less money you spend on your night vision device, the more you can spend on bullets and beams and, Bibles, because that's another aspect that we can't ignore. We can talk about third generation. Oh, I didn't give you lifetimes. First generation, you'll get about 1,500 hours out of a first generation piece, and then you'll need to replace the tube. Now you'll ask me, can I just pay somebody to replace the tube? Well, the tube is the most important, rather expensive item in a night vision device. You'll pay somebody for a tube, and you'll pay somebody an hour or 3 hours, depending on the device, to replace the tube. By that time, you've probably put out enough money to buy another first generation piece. And it might even be a better piece because your piece you probably bought 2 or 3 years ago. So night vision is a finite lifetime, be it first, second, or third generation. Again, first generation you'll get between 12 and 1,500 hours out of it. That's a first generation device, the Gnome. This is a Gnome A1. That's a first generation device also. Second generation device, a G2K. This is American made. Actually, the Gnomes are Russian made. I wanted to point that out. I don't sell any Russian in a plastic body, any first generation Russian in a plastic body, because it's illegal to sell in Russia because it leaks. You want to know a way to find out if your night vision leaks that cost you a couple dollars? Go out and buy one of these throwaway cameras or a roll of 35mm film in a film can. Run your night vision device around it. Pointed at the roll of film. I have a roll of film here. Actually, I don't have a roll of film. I have another little thing I'd like to show you. But that's a film can cut out. Operate the device, point the optical lens at the film, and let it run for a while. Then go out and just shoot some non-important pictures. And if the film is fogged, you know your night vision device is leaking a little bit of radiation. And that's basically a simple, a low-tech way to protect your vision. Another good way, and I want to touch on this, you know, we are subject in the turn of the millennium here in this time period to more solar radiation, solar flares and whatnot than we have been in recorded history. So, you know, self-defense simply isn't picking up your dukes. Self-defense is involved in many things, be it filtering the water you drink or looking across that field before you decide to walk across it. Self-defense for your eyes, a good pair of UV protection, ultraviolet protection, and infrared protection for your glasses, for your eyes, in the daytime, is going to help you have good vision when you're 50, when you're 60, depending on what age you are now. Let's talk 10 years down the road. You know, I have a future. I'd like to believe I have a future, and I'd like to believe that everybody in attendance here and the rest of America has a future too. So protect your eyes. You know, again, we're subject to more solar radiation in this bit of time than we have been in recorded history. So you get out, you're driving, get a good pair of sunglasses, because hey, God gave you eyes so you might see your enemies coming. Again, a first generation device will get you about 1,500 hours. Second generation device, this is built by Nate. It's all American, American tube, American body. It's a 1 power. You can detach this focal lens, take off the 1 power and put on a 3 power. Now, I do this to give you an idea of the versatility of some of the devices you might be able to purchase. A Gnome is fixed. You have a fixed focus lens and you can't change it. It's an entry-level piece. But as you move up the scale, you gain more accessory abilities. For example, camera adaptability or the ability to change focal lenses. A second generation device, again, if you're in the field and you have no moon, as long as you have a star-filled sky, you're going to be happy with the image that a second generation device produces for you. Excuse me. Second and third generation devices will produce an image that is flat from side to side and top to bottom of the viewing of the screen, of the optic end. You won't get that fisheye. You'll get a lot flatter image, which will seem a lot more like real world. Third generation, again, second generation, you're going to get about 2,500 hours. I don't know if I told you that, but you'll get a minimum of 2,500 hours out of a new generation, a new second generation tube. Third generation, 2 American manufacturers. One is saying 9,000 and the other is saying 10,000 hours out of a third generation tube. I can offer you third generation weapon sights. I can offer that piece in a third generation. That's a second generation weapon sight. We can talk about weapon sights for a little while, but I didn't want to go there right now. We'll get to that in a moment. I wanted to talk about batteries for your night vision, and let's look over here. Little solar charger. This one is available from, I had his name somewhere and I didn't mean to stumble for you guys, but you can get that out of Ohio. We will have that in the credits where you can get that solar charger from. Most of your night vision is going to use 3-volt batteries. Some of it will use 2 AA's, and a lot of the American uses 2 AA's. This American G2 uses what appears to be a very thick hearing aid battery, although I'm certain that it drives cameras too. You want to try to pick up something that has a common battery, or a battery that you can recharge. Forgive my stumbling. Third generation, again, you're going to get a minimum of 9,000 hours out of it. Again, some manufacturers are saying 10,000 hours. So you can see how the gradient in performance and the gradient in the available lifetime of the device adds up to different numbers as far as, again, I'll put this in your mailbox, a Gnome in your mailbox. You'll get about 1,500 hours out of it. You'll really like it if you've got any moon in the sky. And I'll put it in your mailbox for like $140, rather $170. We start talking about third generation devices and we're talking around $2,000 and up. So I did that to give you a yardstick to, let you know that, again, it is a get what you pay for, and that's beyond my control. I cut throats on prices, you guys know that. talk about adapting viewers to other tasks. Again, we've talked about the GNOME. You've heard the GNOME many times. You could mount this on your 223, your M16, your AR-15. You can mount it on your 1022. I believe they're called 1022s, or 22-250 is it? Yes, a good high-powered 22. But again, it's almost a weapon that doesn't offer any recoil. A GNOME will live a long time on top of, I wouldn't say put it on your SKS, even with a wooden stock. But there are other devices that can be simply or rather cheaply obtained and altered into weapon sights. One way to do that is to mount a GNOME behind a good light gathering scope, one that'll work, a twilight, sometimes they're called twilight scopes. Mount it behind, and then you already have the weapon sight zeroed, you already have a reticle. See, a GNOME doesn't have a reticle, an aim point. But if you mount it behind a good light gathering scope, you'll have a reticle, you'll have a zero, and you'll have a night vision weapon sight capability. We can talk a little more about third generation. Third generation, even if you've got an overcast sky, even if you don't even see stars, you don't have the reflection from a city in the background, not a single street light, not a porch light off in the distance. As long as you're outside, third generation is still going to produce an image for you, although it might be of shortened range. I'll give you an example. I offer a first generation device, a weapon sight from this manufacturer that you can, in a full moon, you could target at 200 yards. No problem. You'd get good, consistent shots, 200 yards with a full moon. By the time that ambient light is down to a sliver of a moon, you might be able to target at 100 yards. Now, a second generation device, a full moon, a good second generation device, you might be able to target at 300 or 400 yards, depending on the magnification, depending on the lines per millimeter. If you could target at 400 yards with that second generation device during a full moon period, when the moon is gone, that range might be down to 150. Third generation ultra tube, you might be able to target at 600 or 700 yards. Now, many people even in this room will tell you, oh, I can shoot 600 yards. Well, I'd have to see it to believe it. We'll talk more about that. But a third generation device that is an ultra tube, if you have the ability to shoot it 600 yards in the daytime, you'll be able to do that at night with a full moon. Even farther, without that full moon, let's talk worst case scenario. You might have a overcast. That 600 yard sighting ability, 700 yard sighting ability might be cut to 150 or 200, depending on the ambient light. Again, these are light amplifying devices. They won't work in a factory basement, totally sealed room. Least you have an illuminator, because you have to have some available light to make the device work. We'll talk more about illuminators in a moment. One thing I want to stress is, and we'll talk about this more, you'll hear this a few times through this tape, is when you look into a night vision device, it's very much like, again, you're looking at a television screen. It is easy to sit there in your living room and watch television and imagine 3 dimensions in it. Because that's what you're doing. Your mind the image is fooling your eyes and your mind, thinking you're looking into this box when all you're doing is looking at 2 dimensions, height and width. By the time you take that 2-dimensional imagery into the field at night, it's going to be very hard sometimes to discern camouflaged objects. Camouflage that would be really lousy at night, or rather in the daytime. Camouflage that you'd glance over there and see that person, oh look, he's trying to hide over there. That camouflage would be very effective most of the time. And I'm speaking in generalities here. You have to understand that a lot of this will be in generalities, and you're going to, take everything I say basically with a grain of salt. You can, grow from it. But again, a piece of camouflage that is really lousy in the daytime is going to work real well at night, because you're only looking at a 2-dimensional image. If you are uncertain about looking at a particular, perhaps you're looking at an installation or you're looking at an area and you're wondering if those are people in that brush, if you look at them from this area, from a particular area for a while, and you can creep over here, you know, a little slightly more angle change than that, and look at them from a different angle. Remembering what you've seen before, many times, and you might not believe this, and it might seem a bit mystic, but many times your mind will imagine and fill in the blanks, and then all of a sudden you're looking at it, you know what you're looking at. I've said many times, it doesn't have to be an American, but you can put plenty of things in front of someone, and they don't know what they're looking at. It's a tool, yeah, but what's it good for, you know? Or it's a automobile, or it's a weapon. They don't know what it's good for, you know? Speaking of weapons, there's one right there. There's a lot of difference between this, that's a rapier, that's a foil. You ever heard that phrase, foiled again? Well, there's a lot of difference between that and that. Granted, they're both swords, but they both have different applications, and this is what I'm trying to deliver to you today, the application of the device rather than the general overview. By the way, CS, see? Confederate States. I have to grin about that. At any rate, one of the things I'm trying to do for you is show you the basic differences in the devices, and you know, that's a very fine working piece. It won't block that saber, but it's much faster. It'll go places that the saber won't much quicker, but the saber would be very good from horseback, wouldn't it? Again, a first generation piece is good for let's say that a gnome, a first generation gnome, you could call that the equivalent, in nautical equivalent of a life preserver. Second generation might mean you're riding in the lifeboat, okay? The biggest difference, sometimes I explain it like the difference between a first generation and second and third, because the biggest step is between first and second generation as far as low-level light and lifetime of the device. Now, sometimes, again, I've compared a first generation to flying a Sopwith Camel against a Spitfire, but at least you're flying, right? They're looking around, and the ability to look around at night can prove priceless. Okay, we've talked about fires, flares, searchlights, direct and indirect lighting. We've talked about lighted iron. We've talked about lasers. We're going to talk more about lasers. We've talked about low light scopes, and generally you do want to zero your laser and even your night vision in the daytime. Many times you'll find a piece of night vision, and I would advise you, if you don't know much about night vision, and you come across a piece in the battlefield or wherever, if you don't know much about it, try to take it to someone who does. Because a lot of these devices, should you operate them with the protective covers off, or with the adjustable irises inside the lens open and the cover off, you just turn it on, they can burn themselves out because their defenses don't come on immediately. What I'm trying to tell you is, even first generation devices now have a lot of built-in defenses. They have what is known as automatic brightness control and bright source protection. Even the Gnome, my entry-level piece, has both bright source protection and automatic brightness control. Bright source protection, say perhaps you're looking down a lane in a parked car. It's dark, you're looking at the car, he turns his headlights on. Now, it's not going to be like Hollywood, oh, I'm blind. Hollywood would like you to believe that. Perhaps if you have a real old night vision device, something like a PVS-2A without bright source protection in it, it would be a flare in your eye. But again, bright source protection will shut the device off should there be more ambient light than the device can handle. Automatic brightness control limits the amount of light coming out of the focal side of the device, so again, you won't cry, oh, I'm blind. Every piece I offer offers bright source protection and automatic brightness control. If you were to turn a piece on with the cap off, the defenses don't come on as fast as the tube itself, so the tube is going to suffer damage, be it first, second, or third generation, should you operate a piece with or rather turn a piece on in high ambient light with the protective covers off. So again, I would encourage you to, if you don't know anything about a piece of night vision, you find it in the field, take it to someone who can tell you about it, rather than destroy a valuable piece. Because gleaning is going to be a good way to acquire many things. Here's another. We talked about this a moment ago. I got this out. I just wanted to show this to you. For you guys who shoot wheel guns, you know, revolvers. I have a great trust in revolvers rather than automatic, semi-automatic weapons. Revolvers have been doing it for a long time. Perhaps you shoot 38, maybe 357. These are speed loaders. You've all seen speed loaders. What you haven't seen is the film can in between. That's a 35 millimeter film can. Just a little thing I thought of, but it keeps your speed loaders from getting dusty, keeps them from rattling around in your pocket. You can come up with a little pouch that keeps more. There's 24 shots there, loaded pretty quick. Maybe not as fast as an auto with a clip, semi-auto loading a clip, dump the clip, pop in another clip. But you've got a lot, I have a lot more trust in a wheel gun rather than a semi-automatic weapon. So I just thought I'd throw that on the table for you guys because if things don't go clank and clunk and thump in the night while you're moving, you're far better off. Again, we've talked about lighted iron, we've talked about low light scopes, we've talked about batteries, adapting viewers to other tasks. I want to stress again, you're looking at a two-dimensional image. Your mind can make it up if you can look at a particular person or installation from different angles. Again, your mind will make up the differences in what you see until all of a sudden, wow, I know what I'm looking at. So remain cautious in your first judgments as far as what I really think. I'll give you an example. On the way over here today, the sun was just right, and I looked at a house as I was coming across 10. And what appeared to be a crane at the first glance was simply a television antenna, and the boom portion was the shadow of the crane on the roof of the house. But at first glance, it looked like a crane sitting there to me. That's what my first thought was. Immediately, I recognized that, well, my mind had tricked me. But these are things you have to look out for. And again, I would encourage you to try to view objects from multiple angles before you make major decisions. We can talk about eye fatigue, and basically the Army will deploy a LPOP, or a team of people with night vision. Your basic operator will operate the device, use the device, look around. He will run for about 45 minutes, and then he'll hand the device off to his partner. Now, he might pick up a spotting scope, and we'll talk about this too. He might pick up a spotting scope to look around and cover their short ranges, make sure nobody comes up and puts a bayonet in their back while they're looking over there. The previous half hour, we've talked about the history of fighting at night and how to desperate attempts to acquire illumination via fires, torches, flares, progressed into searchlights, and searchlights immediately become targets. They can be directly lighted or bounced, meaning indirect lighting. You can literally bounce a searchlight off of a cloud into another area. We talked about lighted iron, we talked about low light scopes, lasers, and zeroing. You want to zero all your weapon sights in the daytime, okay? It's going to be a lot safer that way. Let's just do that just to keep things on the safe side. We talked about the protective cover on a piece of night vision. Most of your protective covers will have what is known as a pinhole in it. That will allow you to run your device in the daytime for a short time. I wouldn't tell you to go out and run a first, second, or third generation device in full tilt sunlight, in particular in the wintertime, because the sun is going to throw a lot more ambient light back up. As a matter of fact, talking about wintertime, ITT sent out a bulletin a couple of years ago to most of the people who had purchased third generation night vision from them, warning them about using their third generation night vision in snow, or rather, above the snow, because, again, the snow does reflect a lot of light. What I try to tell people is any place you can see with your natural vision, you're probably not going to need to turn your night vision on. At least you need to confirm a target or confirm a particular activity or item or, vehicle that is there. But, again, in order to get the most light out of your night vision, any place you can see with your normal eye, be it, under a street light, into the porch. Now, if you have to take a shot onto a porch or under a street light, most of the time your vision, your night vision will deal with changing from a darkened area to a semi-lighted area, not a full daylight area. Many of your pieces of night vision, you will be able to point and look at a street light or the porch light if that becomes a area that needs to be targeted or observed. I wouldn't say do it for a long time because again, you're running hours onto your device in a matter of moments. So to speak, driving your Pinto up the expressway in second gear. Okay, that's the easiest way to explain that. We talked about batteries. You want to acquire night vision with a battery that you can recharge or a battery that is generally available. You'll see even night vision powered by 9-volt batteries. I believe we'll be able to purchase 9-volt batteries most likely for the rest of our lives. We talked about adapting night vision viewers to other services. For example, using simple viewers to become weapon sights or adapting simple viewers to become camera adaptable. We talked about fielding night vision, and I have to stress the two-dimensional image that it will fool you. We talked a little bit about driving. If you want to drive with night vision, you're probably going to have a dual tube system because then you'll actually have stereo actual depth in your vision. Again, you're looking at a two-dimensional image. If you do it twice, you can trick your mind into thinking that you're looking at a three-dimensional image. If you have two, again, a goggle with two tubes is going to allow you to drive and experience three-dimensional viewing almost exactly as a naked eye would. Again, I want to tell you, if you're not certain of targets, try to look at it from a couple different angles. You know, you can get to the point where you can't tell a deer from a cow or a dog from a coyote as far as distance, or if you've got a cheap piece of night vision as far as the lines per millimeter. Make certain of your targets. I can't impress that upon you enough. We talked about eye fatigue, and we talked about basically LPOPs, half an hour on, half an hour off, which is going to bring us to fielding night vision. And I'd like to take a break here in a moment. We're like 45 minutes out, so we got a whole nother page here. So we're going to take a break in a moment and let you guys, smoke them if you got them. We got decaf coffee out here. Some say it's not even real coffee, but we're going to take a break, okay? Okay. And we're back. I hope all you, got to call the wife, say hello, smoke that cigarette, drink that coffee. How would that go? What would be the word? Create new alliances and build up good working teams and team members here. I want to talk about deploying night vision for a while. I want to talk about, and this might seem a little bit elite or snobbish or whatnot, and I don't really, I want you to overlook that because as time goes on, people are afflicted by things. You don't want to field coughers, sneezers, or wheezers. If your best shooter has got a cold, you don't send him in the field that night because, hey, very much like daytime. Most of your field motion and tactics are going to be very much like daytime, and you have to bear in mind that you're not the only person in the world with night vision, right? So this is why I say you have to treat the night very much like the daytime anymore. If you choose to walk casually across the field and you catch one in the forehead, that's your own fault, right? Okay. Again, the rest of the company would move across the field in the low dog crawl, wouldn't they? So it would probably be best to either skirt the field or crawl across it. Again, this is, just my own personal opinion, but I'd rather not be caught by surprise. Let's talk a little bit about moving across the field. Obviously, if you're moving, you're probably on the offensive. you're going someplace, you have an objective, right? Right. Okay. If you have multiples in your team, multiple pieces of night vision in your team, what's going to happen is, see, you're not going to burn your night vision all night. You're not going to stand there looking through a weapon sight and trying to walk. That's going to be awful hard to do with a 4-power piece. That's why if you're trying to walk with a piece of night vision, you're better off with a 1-power. It gives you, even with a single tube, a gnome, with a single tube, monocular, you're better off with that than trying to walk with a 4-power piece. It totally distorts your depth perception, and you're thinking you're putting your foot someplace, and it just doesn't happen. Many times a 4-power piece won't even focus as close as 5 or 6 feet, so it would be worthless to try to walk with it anyway. Again, as you're advancing, you would turn on the device, look around, look down the path, look across the field, look at your objective, where you want to be next when you turn on your device. You turn on the device, if it's a first generation piece, you're going to have to wait a moment for the tube to warm up, and then it will show you a good image. This is one good way to discern if someone tries to sell you a piece of night vision and tells you it's a second or third generation piece, and you turn it on, and it takes a moment, maybe 15 seconds before the image is bright enough to discern whatever you might be looking at. If you turn the power off and the device continues to show you an image, the device, actually what you've done is warmed up the tube. As the tube cools, the image gets darker and darker. That is the basic characteristic of a first generation piece. Second generation piece, you power it up, comes on immediately, you disconnect the power, you turn the switch, you take your power off, the second and third generation device will turn off immediately. Now there is a first generation device that is in the field. It's maybe 2 inches by 3 inches by 7 inches, has what appears to be a hand grenade spoon on it. You depress this spoon and you've actuated a piezo piece, and now you've created the electricity that's going to work the device. As soon as you let the spoon go, the device goes off. That's a first generation piece. That's the only device I know of in first generation that goes on and off with the application of the power. So I've tried to describe to you a way to discern between first and second and third generation. And again, this is a very general statement, but it is good enough to let you know the basic difference between first and second and third generation should you try to buy a piece used, okay? Again, you only want to field to the people most healthy at the time. Again, no coughers, no sneezers, no wheezers. Even if it's your best shooter is down, got a cold, got a runny nose or whatnot, he stays home that night. I can't stress that enough, because one man's noise could kill a whole company. Again, you're going to advance in an overlap if you have the ability, if you have multiple teams, or rather multiple pieces of night vision in your team. One person is going to advance while the other person watches as an overview, so to speak. The forward person will rest and look even forward and backward as his team catches up with him and passes him. Then, so to speak, leapfrogging. That's how a good way to advance, using night vision to observe the advance. Always remember to look back too, because again, you're looking back at places you've looked at before, and you might discern something from a different angle that you couldn't before. Sometimes if you don't do this, and sometimes if you don't discern something, discover what it is you're looking at beforehand, you might just move into a field of fire and never move again. I have to tell you that camouflage, really lousy, stinking lousy camouflage in the daytime is going to work real well fielded against a piece of night vision. So I would encourage your caution. If you're going to use night vision in a defensive mode, basically in a LPO piece, so to speak, deployment, listening, post, observation post, half of that is listening. Most people forget that, but half of that is listening. So again, if you're in an LPOP, you're not going to burn that night vision device all night. All you're doing is putting hours on it. You might turn it on if it's a first generation piece. You warm up the tube, observe the area, and let the tube cool down, and continue to listen. You hear that twig snap, you hear the birds rise when birds don't jump. Groups of birds don't jump into the air at night. And again, that's a general statement, but you hear a bunch of birds rise over there, you might turn the night vision device on and see what caused that natural commotion. There's a couple of things, you can learn. Benjamin Franklin, here's a good one. Benjamin Franklin said something like, most men die when they're, or rather graduate school, die when they're 16, and we bury them when they're 54. Now at that time, most men went to school like Jethro, you know, to the 6th grade, and die when they're 18. And he was, I believe, he was trying to explain their unimaginative state of life, or their inability to learn more. So again, most men graduate school when they're, graduate school, die when they're 18 or 21, and we bury them when they're 54. So that's not something that is conducive to living through the night by not trying to learn. Well, you can learn a lot. You can learn, if you really work hard at it, you can learn from ants and worms. I'm not going to talk about ants and worms. I can tell you about deer, though. You know, when a deer lays down in the wild, generally, a deer will lay with its eyes looking downwind. Now, its nose is covering it upwind. If something tries to come at the deer from upwind, he's going to smell it. If something tries to approach the deer from downwind, his nose doesn't work, but his eyes will. His or her eyes will. Now, overall, 360 degrees, the deer is employing his hearing, okay? There's a lot to be learned from that. That's basically an LP-OP situation. There's a lot to be learned from a tiger waiting for dinner to walk by, too. You know, the tiger just lays there in the grass until the dinner is 1, maybe 2 strides away. He doesn't want to work hard for dinner, right? And if you live down in New Orleans, the other side of that same description might be don't fire till you see the whites of their eyes. Now, we'll talk more about that in just a moment. But again, I want you to remember that night vision in a approaching situation is easy to defeat as far as with camouflage. We're talking about green screen night vision. We're not talking about thermal imaging or even thermal detection. We'll talk more about that in a moment, though. But I want you to remember about camouflage. I can't stress that enough. We can compare green screen night vision to thermal imaging devices, and they can very well go hand in hand. You can talk to Raytheon and give them $20,000 for a piece of thermal imaging devices, but you can go to particular places, for example, the Cabela's catalog, and pick up the cheap handheld thermal imaging devices. Now, you might look at something with a weapon sight, a green screen, and not be certain what it is. Why, that might even be a rock. But if you turn the thermal imaging device and scan the field and that rock is glowing heat, you might know that that isn't a rock, okay? And I use this rock as a demonstration because I have seen this. I have seen people lay down in the field and curl up into a fetal position, and other people with night vision basically, let's say, hunting them, and walk right by this person. If you're not familiar with the area, if you don't know the trees and the rocks, you look over there, well, that's just a rock. So if you can complement your night vision device with a simple handheld heat thermal device, doesn't have to produce an image. Sometimes they'll just beep and they'll just flash little LED lights. That is a great complement to a green screen. Don't, if you can afford it, don't turn your back on it. It is akin to having another person looking around for you, only with abilities that you don't have. Let's talk about shooting at night. You'll see advertisements, in particular for PVS-4s, which is so almost a dinosaur in the industry now, but many people still look at it as the standard. Well, I don't want to erase the board there. I won't lean on the board anymore. But the PVS-4 was a military piece, the first second-generation military piece to be fielded by American troops. Again, it was the yardstick in the industry for years. Weighs about 4 pounds. This piece here weighs just over 2 pounds. It is comparable in performance to a PVS-4. That's why I say they used to be the yardstick in the industry. A PVS-4, you can change the reticles on it. You can put a reticle in it for a mortar, a recoilless rifle, an M1, an M14, an M2, 50 caliber. PVS-4s are pretty versatile, so again, that's one of the reasons why they still are basically accepted as the yardstick in the industry. Everything else has to measure up to or exceed that piece. One of the good things about it is many of our people here have had experience with it. You won't see many more of them fielded anymore. Most of those have been turned into the citizens, the civilian ranks. They've gone to police departments. They've gone to private owners. I know why I started talking about PBS-4s. You'll see advertisements in catalogs saying, these are the night vision weapon sights that our troops have used in South America to take shots at 600 yards. Now that brings about the question, what are our troops doing in South America taking out people at 600 yards? That begs that question, doesn't it? But that's a highly trained person that can shoot with a night vision device at 600 yards. That is, there's a lot to be taken into effect there. Again, you're looking at a television, you're looking at pixels. To take a shot at 600 yards, you're looking at probably a human in the optical lens might be 2 millimeters. Okay, might be a millimeter. So you're talking about a very small target. One thing that most people don't think about when they're shooting at night is windage. In the daytime, you can look at the trees and you can look at the grass and you can look at the clouds and all and judge your windage. Well, if you have a real powerful amplification spotting scope, you can judge the mirage and gauge your windage there too. Well, a green screen night vision won't show you any mirage. All you can do with it is basically look at the grass, look at the leaves, look at other things in the area, and basically try to judge your windage. A lot of windage will take effect at 600 yards. Everybody in this room knows that. 600 yards, a 50 caliber at 600 yards is going to be affected by windage even. Not as much as a 30-06 or something, but again, it will be affected. The easiest way to negate the windage factor at night is to position yourself directly up or directly downwind. So you are shooting at the minimum angle to the wind, so you have the least effect of windage. Again, the way to combat windage is to either, one, close the yardage, close your distance to the target, or two, position yourself directly up or directly downwind from your target. Now, if that is impossible due to the lay of the land, the way buildings are arranged or whatnot, you will have to shorten distance. To do that, hey, you're going to have to use the same skills you use in the daytime. I'm not here to tell you how to creep and crawl and low dog, all of this, I'm going to worm across the floor. I'm not here to tell you to do that. I refer back to fielding only your best people. The people who know when to stick their head up and how to live through the daytime. Because again, you're not the only person with night vision out there. Just because you own a piece of night vision doesn't make you king of the night. So if you're going to be shooting at night, you want to either, one, close the distance, or you want to position yourself directly up or directly downwind. We can talk about team size. I've talked about 3 in a shooting team. I would like to see 3 in a shooting team simply for the fact that you have another person other than your spotter. A shooter and a spotter too, I have seen this, become so involved in what's going on in their targeted area that again, someone walks up and steals their victuals, takes their boots, and that team's never heard from again. So the third man is the one basically that can work the short distance around the team, the man with the handgun or the man with the automatic weapon that is there to keep the team secure in short range.
I'm going to come back for the other class.
You can, again, the third man, if you alter your piece, the shooting piece and the two observing pieces, spotter pieces, if the third man is simply on the ground and using the sky as a to backlight the original, or rather the surrounding area, the third man might not even need a piece of night vision in order to cover the team because he's using the sky to silhouette the immediate area. And anything in the immediate area approaching them would be designated as a target. You can work out passwords and this and that in order to overcome being shot by one of your team members a little down the road a piece, so to speak. But that's just things. Again, I'm not here to tell you about how to work out particular little tactical things. I'm giving you an overview. I'm hoping that you can work from this. Again, all of your best people, field your best people, and these small things are going to be worked out. You're going to know how to approach other team members in the darkness and live through it. You're basically going to know how to move across the field or through the woods without making noise, or even through the city with making minimal amounts of noise. How to move a team from one place to another and get their whole intact, take care of the mission, and extract the team. Everybody comes home. That's the idea. That can be accomplished a lot easier under the cover of darkness, and that's why we're doing this video. Small teams, I want to talk for a moment. You all remember Sergeant York. Maybe you saw the movie when you were a kid. Sergeant York was a shooter, let's say. There's no other word to describe the man. He took, I think, 119 Germans captive in World War I, almost single-handedly. That's quite an accomplishment. We can talk about other people, but the shooter that comes to mind is Carlos Hathcock. Many of you have seen his video. Many of you we've talked about it and discussed different things in it, actions and tactics. Hathcock had 93 confirmed kills. Hathcock held a company of men down. Hathcock and his spotter held more than 100 men down for, I believe it was like 4 days, wasn't it? They called in artillery and illuminating shells. I understand the Arty boys were fighting each other over who's going to pull a lanyard to help out this guy holding down 100 North Vietnamese regulars. Granted, they were a little bit green, but I brought that example to the table to show the value of training. And I got to tell you, simply sitting down and watching this video is not training. I'm trying to put some ideas in your head. I'm trying to give you the basics. Okay, every sentence in here, every sentence from the front, from history to fielding to fisheye to adapting viewers to different purposes, to looking at objects from 2 different angles, every sentence in here you can develop paragraphs on. I'm hoping that you will. I'm hoping that when this class is done, we'll discuss this, and perhaps the next time we build a tape, we'll build a tape that covers a lot more subjects. Large teams, there was a team in Vietnam of 18 men, long-range recon patrol that was, so to speak, stuck on a hill. They were stuck there because they were surrounded by most of I believe it was a battalion of North Vietnamese regulars. Most of 1,000 men there down on the plain below them. They took the high ground just before dark and held on all night. When they ran out of hand grenades, they started throwing rocks down the embankment. And Charlie had looked to see if it was a hand grenade. Most of them wouldn't look. They'd simply roll to another location and the Marine would shoot the moving enemy. Again, deception is a big part of warfare, be it in the daytime or at night. And night just is so good for covering motion. I can't describe it. But again, a night vision piece is going to be a very valuable addition to your team, and might just be the difference between keeping a company that's asleep, enjoying the night. And I'm sleeping. Hey, I'm a daytime guy. The guy with the night vision might just be the shepherd for the whole of the group. Or the guy with the night vision might be responsible for moving a bunch of civilians through an area. This is another application. It doesn't necessarily have to be a combat application. There are many applications for night vision. Escape and evasion is one that immediately comes to mind for someone who is not necessarily a combatant, but simply wishes to move his family to a safe area. Maybe if he's a good family man and a good neighbor, he might come and knock on your door and tell you, let's go, and move his neighbors out too. At any rate, I get back to the group on the hill. They were there overnight. It was so overcast they couldn't call in air support. They called in a little bit of Arty, but they were there all night holding off, again, most of 1,000 enemy, 18 men. They got helicoptered out late the next afternoon, and I'd like to sit down and describe a whole lot of this story to you, but it's been a long time since I've read this account. When they were helicoptered out, 2 or 3 of them were dead. Every one of them was wounded. Every one of them. But I'm certain that they were patting each other on the back, just glad to be alive, and that each of that man, every one of those men, that made certain that the rest of those men made that team live through that night and go home. That's it. That's what I'm talking about here is teamwork. And be it a 3-man team or a large man team, this is what you're fighting for. This, America. It's not. I'm not fighting for the right to watch Saturday Night Football. I want to tell you this, and then we're going to wrap things up. You know, you can travel with weapons, and you can do this and that. You can place all your thought in worldly training and whatnot. But I'll tell you that wherever I go in my breast pocket here, there with me goes a pocket constitution, my earthly defenses. And there with me goes, this is a Desert Storm, New Testament, I got to tell you that. Goes with me everywhere. That's my spiritual defense. You won't win without it. You'll be fighting the godless hordes. God, I want to tell you, I picked up a quote on the way here. God said to somebody in Scripture, he said, I will contend with those who contend with you and save your children. I don't know where that passage came from, but I know it's true. What you want to do is build dedicated men into teams, be they big or small. You want men without clutter in their minds. You want men who can fight calm. I tell you, I'd much rather stand up and fight anybody in this room hand to hand, someone who says, oh, I go crazy when I fight, than fight a man with clear eyes and a calm determination. And I'm certain many of you have experienced that very small bit of reality. Again, if you can maintain your ability to discern the things around you, you know, find out what's going on and know what your targets are, you're going to be a lot better off. Night vision gives you that ability to a certain extent. The rest of it's here. It's between your ears. Just like when you learned how to ride a bike, you didn't have any balance when you were a little kid. You barely had enough balance to walk. You learned to walk, you learned to ride a tricycle, you learned to ride a bike with training wheels, and one day the training wheels were gone, and you're learning to ride this bike. You're still learning to ride this bike, and you're getting better and better at it. Now you've been doing it for a few years. Well, if you think that you can't learn any more from it, again, I refer back to the Benjamin Franklin statement. You go into the field at night with night vision. I tell many of the people who buy night vision to, at least for the first 30 days, to try to get out in the field with it for 5 or 10 minutes a night. Because just like saying your ABCs and just like doing the same things over and over in boot camp every day, after about 30 days, you have shuffled many of these thoughts, many of these actions, the way to disassemble your weapon or the way to turn on your night vision device with a minimum of motion. You have learned these things. You have shuffled them, so to speak, deep into your unconscious. You are thinking about them even when you're not upfront thinking about them. So like swimming or like riding that bicycle, you have stored that capability in your mind and you are still thinking about it. You might even be developing tactics. So I would encourage you to become familiar with your pieces of night vision, your devices, to get out there and use them at least 5 or 10 minutes every night for the next month. Every night for the next month. That's going to, 1, get you real familiar with your device. 2, you're going to be thinking, again, you're going to be thinking about your device even when it's not on the front of your mind. 3, it's going to give you the ability to become that Minuteman, that I know what's got to happen, I know how to do this, I know how to deploy this, bam, it's done. You won't even have to think about particular things like, well, someone's drowning, should I jump in the water? I know how to swim. Okay, we won't go much farther. I wanted to tell you another thought that came to my mind on the way here. You know, I live in a particular place. I live in a house. Most of you do, you know. We aren't transients here, you know. We don't sleep under bridge embankments and dig holes in the ground, although it might come to that someday. But I do live in a particular place, but I believe that, you know, my home runs from the Atlantic to the Pacific. My home runs from Canada to Mexico. And I certainly don't want to catch you messing around in my backyard. I would hope that most of America feels that way, but, you know, hopes and dreams. Keep dreaming, okay? But that's what we need. We need more Americans to think like that. I want to tell you about shooting with a mask on. We want to talk about that for a minute. And Got a standard American mask here, a full face shield. We've got a Israeli, actually, you know, most of the pieces of night vision that you read are manufactured in Israel or manufactured in Russia truly, but this is a Israeli / Russian gas mask, and I'm going to take a moment. I'm not going to put this on. It's going to be awful hard for you to understand me if I put this on, but you can see that this has two eyepieces. If I bring a device up and turn it on, the reason this boot is here, it's not just for fancy protection. The reason this boot is here, when I bring the weapon to my eye, when I bring this boot to my eye, I have sealed off what is called the wash, the green light that is coming out of this device and illuminating my face. Now, if I hold the weapon sight out here, this wash, the green light, is going to illuminate a goodly portion of my face, and anybody standing down there is going to see that. That's the reason this boot is here. You want to bring that boot direct, you want to seat that weapon in the proper area, bring that boot up to your eye to eliminate any leaking light so you don't give away your position to an enemy. That's a second generation piece there. 4 power, weighs 2.2 pounds. Has a lit reticle, has a built-in 100-yard illuminator that you can turn off. Now this is key here. You don't want to buy a device that when you power it up, turns on the tube and also turns on an illuminator. Excuse me. An illuminator to another piece of night vision in the field, you will appear as if you're waving around a flashlight, so to speak. Look at me. You don't want to do that. One of the reasons you're out in the night is so people don't look at you. Again, most pieces come with a built-in illuminator. You can build illuminators. There's an illuminator simply using the red lens that comes in the base of these. You can purchase illuminators. This is basically a 200-yard illuminator. This is what is called. About that more in a moment. You can turn it on continually simply by turning the end cap. Now it's off. One thing you don't want to do is look at this over time. This is a powerful enough illuminator that it will cause damage to your eyes. But here's a point to be made. This piece is on now. If I simply release the pressure from that, it's off. Now if you're going to field an illuminator, this is a good piece, because if I turn this on and I'm using it to scan the field, should I be hit, you know, bam, wow, I've taken a shot, I fall down. If this falls away from me and is still on, perhaps it's pointed up into the air. Now again, the enemy out there with a piece of night vision, he's got me zeroed, doesn't he? He's going to call in Artie or the mortars, or he's going to send somebody over there to cut my throat. So again, a piece of an illuminator or a laser that lights with a pressure switch. Simply apply the pressure, it's on. If I drop this weapon, it's going off. It's not going to fire, but the laser is going off. You don't want this laser on. Basically, if I'm wounded, someone else in the field is wounded, you don't want his laser on, pointing to anyone and everyone the location of the wounded person. Well, one of the reasons I got the gas masks out is we were talking about wash, the light that comes from a piece of night vision. If I were to have this gas mask, if I were wearing this in a gas deployed area, and I brought this weapon sight up to my gas mask, imagine the light filling the whole of that interior of the gas mask. Now this is going to basically be lit up. One thing you can do is go to a gas mask with individual eyes, simply put a piece of tape, put a piece of cloth, drape over a piece of cloth, and we'll talk more about this piece of cloth, but you could drape a piece of cloth over the weapon, over your gas mask, so when you bring the weapon sight up, you're putting light in this eye and not bringing light out this eye, so you're not, again, pointing out your position. That's going to be a lot harder to do with this type of mask. Although you could put a piece of tape over there, cut a hole. You could do that any number of ways. If you were to build a bonnet, or rather a head cover, cut a little hole in it, and then you can put this cover on and you can bring your weapon sight up, and you won't have any problem with what is known as the wash. Another reason to carry a good piece of camouflage, you can get this in military surplus stores. This is Advantage, to name a name brand. It's very good in mid-Michigan, most of the Midwest. This will do you very well most of the year. what you want to do is lay a piece of this out in front of the muzzle. When you're prone on the ground and take a shot, many times you can kick up dust from the muzzle blast. Even that dust would be noticeable at night. There's another way to hide that muzzle flash. A good way to hide the actual muzzle flash at night, you won't see it here, but what we're lacking on this is a flash hider that simply appears as an ice cream cone. It might be out here, it might be 3 inches, it might be tapered down to the muzzle and literally clamped on the muzzle with a hose clamp. It could be made from sheet metal and painted dull black. Looking downstream from the muzzle of the weapon, that muzzle blast is going to appear as a dot instead of as a cross. In many of your flash suppressors will produce a flash to the sides and to the top and bottom. Now, if you introduce the flash to the front of a night vision device, you might shut the device off for a moment. This is another reason to build yourself a cone. Again, a second generation weapon sight on a rifle. You know, full moon, this is a good piece out to as far as this weapon can shoot in the daytime. Here's a second generation piece. Now, you really don't want to let the DNR see you with this, you know, the damn near Russians. I mean, it does nothing right, or is that the Department of Natural Resources? You really don't want to let them see you with one of these, but this is what is known as a Falcon. This is a handgun. This was originally developed as handgun night vision. You notice how big this screen is. That's almost 2 inches. It's meant to be held at an arm's length. In this application, it's going on a bow. You know, this is a good little Bear Bruin. I can hit out to 50 yards, pretty predictable with this. I can almost do that at night. Now that's a very quiet killing tool here. We can imagine applications. If anything, it'll put victuals on the table and you won't be drawing the attention of the local constabulary. Well, you know, one more thing I wanted to talk about, and then we'll wrap this up, you guys. I know y'all want to get home. I offer the camouflage detection lenses. These are the clip-ons. They're also offered in what appears to be just a pair of sunglasses. I can offer the regular glasses in the clamshell now. Basically, these were developed during the Vietnam War in order to find camouflaged people and installations, devices, and caches of weapons. You know, you can lean a weapon up against a tree in the jungle, walk away from it, you might never find it again. At any rate, these were developed to find camouflaged people and devices, objects in a jungle environment. Now, that jungle environment, you can read that green chlorophyll. What these will do for you, be they the clip-ons or the regulars, they'll shift up your perception 250 nanometers, basically from the chlorophyll, the frequency of chlorophyll, the way it vibrates. It will turn that chlorophyll to your vision black or dark gray. Now, the guy in the BDUs, the guy with the painted face, the camouflaged weapon, the camouflaged tank, it's going to stand out because it's not chlorophyll based. It doesn't shift up. The whole field is going to turn black or dark gray. Again, the guy in the BDUs, the guy with the painted face, the camouflaged weapon is going to stand out because those greens aren't going to, because they're not based on chlorophyll, they're not going to shift up that 250 nanometers. So they will stand out like the proverbial green thumb. I'll put them in your mailbox dirt cheap. These lenses are aboard NASA satellites. This isn't akin to the X-ray glasses you see in the back of comic books. These really work. I've put probably, I don't even want to say how many, I'm proud of how many of these I've put in the field. I had one person call me and say, well, I don't really get anything out of them. He had just taken them out of the envelope, or rather the box that I mailed them to him. And I told him, well, hand them around to a couple people in your team. And if nobody finds any advantage with them, send them back to me. I'll refund your money. He never contacted me again. I'm certain that he put someone, or he took them outside. He might not even have taken them outside. He took them outside and discovered their advantages, I would guess. I wanted to talk a little more about lasers. Perhaps you've got one night vision device in a team or in a unit. That would be a better phrase in this instance. One night vision device in a unit. But the unit has to be somewhere. During their travels, they encounter, let's say, opposition. Now, if one person has a piece of night vision, he can basically tell where the enemy is. And once the firefight starts, you can start to shoot at the muzzle blast. Now, that works to a certain extent. You have to put a lot of bullets down range to make that work, though. One thing that you can do, the person with a night vision device, now this is very much akin to walking point in the jungle, because as soon as you light a night vision, as soon as you light a laser, when there's another night vision device in the area, that laser is going to look like a silver dot. Depending on how far away you get, it might look the size of a quarter, a shiny silver quarter someplace. If you have any particulate, any dust in the air, if the rain is coming, you will see a continuous line or an interrupted line. Can you see how that interrupts on my fingers? Imagine if that were rain, this would look like a continuous line there. That is if there is particulate in the air or rain in the air. If there is, again, if there's dust in the air, that the other person with night vision will be able to follow that line of sight, or rather that line of that laser directly back to its point of origin. That's not very good, but if you wanted to point out to a group of people a target, simply illuminate it with a laser and have people mass shoot the targeted area. Now that's one way to defeat opponents with a single piece of night vision using multiple shooters. The problem with that is the guy with the illuminator is basically the point man. He's out front. You can take an illuminator, you can take a laser like that, extend the on-off switch, and put it on a 10-foot pole. You can put it on an antenna. And now he can be over here. I can actually be here, but the indicator for the targeting is 10 or 12 feet over there. Maybe 6 feet, maybe that's just enough, where all of that targeting that the enemy is sending you is 6 feet over there, and you're half in a hole, but you're still directing the 10 or 20 people that are around you to shoot at a single area, simply by lighting that area with a laser. Well, we can talk about simple listening devices for a moment. They're cheap. You can find them all over. This is about 15 years old. This is good if you're a turkey hunter or whatnot. But again, it has a good application in an LPOP because it extends your natural ability. Anything that you can do to extend your natural ability is going to be a help. All I can say is I hope that I have given you a good bit of information. I hope you can run with it and develop it further in your own techniques and abilities. Everybody's different. Unconventional many times is going to, unconventional, let's relate that with unexpected. And many times unexpected things that happen in a war are the things that make victors out of underdogs. Okay? At that, I'll dismiss the class and wish y'all luck. If you have any questions, we can take questions afterward, and we'll just run from there. You guys, I know this is turning into a video, and if you want to talk to me about night vision or the camouflage detection lenses, you can reach me at 1231-796-8458. Again, that's 1231-796-8458. And I got to tell you guys once more, you're only looking at a two-dimensional image. Be cautious, be careful. Tear them up. Go and get them. Hold nothing back. God bless you. Oh. We'll do a basic performance review. Again, first generation, if you've got moon in the sky, you'll be happy with it. If you don't have any moon in the sky, you're probably going to have to go to the illuminator, or your range will be shortened to such an extent that you wouldn't want to go with an illuminator. Second generation, even if there's no moon in the sky, As long as you have stars in the sky, you're going to produce a good, an acceptable image. Third generation, even if there's no moon in the sky, it's overcast and you have no visible stars, no glow from a city in the distance, no street lights, no porch lights, anything, you're still going to produce a good image with third generation outside under an overcast sky. First generation, you'll get about 1,200 hours out of it to 1,500 hours. Second generation, you'll get a minimum of 2,500. And third generation, you'll get a minimum of 9. Some manufacturers are saying 10,000 hours. Most everything comes with at least a year warranty. Some pieces come with a 2-year warranty. Many times the manufacturer will offer you an extended warranty at a particular price. If you want to talk to me about any of these items, you can reach me at 1-231-796-8458. Again, that number is 1-231-796-8458. Thank you very much.